All right, you wrote an essay for today, a short essay evaluating the Puritans. So I'd like to get just an idea of what kind of things you considered as you were thinking about the Puritans. How did you evaluate them? Michaela, start us off.
I really admire their dedication and their focus, and I feel like this is that we can learn from. But I really did not agree with some of the things that they believe, just because that's not what I believe, and I feel like I don't believe in the elect. I feel like God wants to save us all, and that's what I agree with. But I think that they were really amazing people that I used to learn.
Okay, so you liked their dedication, didn't like their theology, essentially. Devin?
I like the idea that they base their faith solely on Scripture and not on anything else like the Roman Catholic Church does today.
And others too, like the Church of England as well. Okay. Anybody else? Are you all just in agreement with the two that have already spoken? Anybody in disagreement with anything that either of them said? Or have any additional thoughts? All right, we're going to continue looking at the Puritans. Today we're going to examine how they dealt with what are called dissidents, people that disagreed. So if someone would get Stephen, we will proceed. Turn in your materials to an article that is entitled Hellfire. The Hellfire is on one page and the is on the other page. Hellfire. And in this article, we'll be looking at Anne Hutchinson. I'm not sure if you have read anything about her before, but this will be looking at what happened in regards to the Puritan treatment of Anne Hutchinson, and we'll find out about her in the article. Okay, everybody ready? Follow along. Hellfire. According to Anne Hutchinson, the quickest way to heaven was across the Atlantic Ocean. Salt spray splashed across the deck of the Griffin, where passengers listened with awe to 42-year-old Anne Hutchinson. Squinting into the summer sun of 1633, this woman of haughty and fierce carriage declared she received private messages from God. "Never has any great thing happened to me, but it was revealed to me beforehand," she said. To prove her point, she predicted the date when they would reach New England. It was the power of religion that led Hutchinson, her husband William, and their 11 kids onto that ship. Like many of her fellow passengers, Anne was a British Puritan who believed that the official Church of England had to be purified and rid of its lavish rituals in order to save followers from an afterlife in hell. According to Hutchinson, only one minister, John Cotton, knew the true path to God. But in 1633, Cotton fled a crackdown against reformers and sailed to the 3-year-old Puritan-controlled Massachusetts Bay Colony. Hutchinson and her family followed. "When our teacher, John Cotton, came to New England, it was great trouble to me," Anne wrote. "I could not rest, but I must come hither." She didn't foresee that her decision would lead to humiliation and bloody death. The Hutchinsons, wealthy from William's fabric business, soon became community leaders in Boston. Anne won respect with her work as a nurse, delivering babies, and offering such cures as mint for a stomachache and parsley for a toothache. One day, Cotton told Hutchinson that she had offended a few women by not attending their religious meetings. To make amends, she opened her own home for Monday night discussions. Her new female friends, who were expected to remain silent in church, were thrilled to hear her repeat the Sunday sermon and boldly interpret it. In a society that forbade dancing, theater, and many books, these gatherings were a rare entertainment that soon drew Boston's leading men. By popular demand, Hutchinson held meetings on Thursdays too, but the crowd still spilled out her door. "Come along with me," wrote one admirer, "and I'll bring you to a woman that preaches better gospel than any of your blackcoats that have been at the Ninniversity." Dung in their faces. Along with popularity came controversy. Hutchinson's belief that true Christians won't lose their place in heaven, even if they sin, made the authorities worry that she was encouraging unlawful behavior. In 1636, ministers from around the colony denounced the meetings as disorderly and without rule. In response, Hutchinson led a group of women in a walkout during one of Boston minister John Wilson's sermons and instructed men not to serve in a militia Wilson oversaw. "So the faithful ministers of Christ have dung cast in their faces," wrote Minister Thomas Wells. And in November 1637, a poster tacked to Anne's door called her to court. At the trial, Hutchinson's nimble self-defense nearly got her off, but Governor John Winthrop silenced her. "We do not mean to discourse with those of your sex." His taunts eventually pushed Anne to lose her temper. "God will ruin you and your posterity and this whole state," she warned. The vengeful court sentenced Hutchinson to banishment, but first imprisoned her for 4 months. Ministers visited her daily, according to Winthrop, to reclaim her from her errors. Meanwhile, he dug up the grave of a miscarried child Hutchinson had delivered. He described it as a devil with horns, a tail, and claws. In March, Hutchinson was called to church for a public scolding from her former idol, Cotton. Pale and sickly, she read an apology at the next service. But when Wilson pushed her to revoke her criticisms of the ministers, that was too much. "My judgment is not altered, though my expression alters," she told him. Furious, Wilson delivered his final punishment, excommunication. "I do deliver you up to Satan, that you may learn no more to blaspheme, to seduce, and to lie." Hutchinson left defeated, trudging 60 miles through snow-covered wilderness with 9 of her children. Finally, she reached Rhode Island, where she miscarried her 15th child. Reverend Wilson announced that she had given birth to a monster made up of 29 lumps, corresponding to the 29 errors that were eventually proved against her. The Hutchinsons settled on Aquidneck Island, where they formed a new colony with 80 families that followed them from Massachusetts. In 1643, after her husband's death, Hutchinson and her children were massacred by Native American warriors. It was, according to Wilson and Winthrop, God's revenge. Written by Michael Small. All right, so what is your impression of how the Puritans treated those who disagreed with them from this article? What do you think? Jessica?
Kind of intolerant to it.
Yeah, intolerant? Any other words you would use? Article left no impression at all. Did I not read it well enough? You're going to allow Michaela to do all your talking for you? You know, you can't take her to college with you. Caleb?
I thought it was kind of strange how they persecuted those who didn't believe what they believed, although they were fleeing from religious persecution.
Mm-hmm. Anyone else? Okay, Michaela.
I feel like it was really unbiblical. Like they're always they got everything straight out of the Bible, but like Paul tells people, you know, if there's a dispute, like, you don't have to really fight, like, if, like, they excommunicate a grandmother, basically, like, I don't think that that's biblical at all.
Okay, anyone like to add anything to what's been said? Yeah, this is the first year, I think, that I haven't had students write a page on their impressions of this. But I expect that there will be some verbal interaction, otherwise we may have to go back to writing everything to force you to think and put something down. So if you would like me to continue with the plan of discussing things, then you need to discuss. Stephen.
I thought they were like really impatient, which sort of goes along with intolerant, but I don't think she was treated fairly. Maybe they could have like tried to talk to her, not just like attacked her.
Okay. Jessica?
Well, that sounds kind of like weird, or like the judgment was like too fast
Can you
on
talk
her,
louder,
and
please?
like they thought that their only option was to like offer her up to Satan so he could like fix her or something.
Okay, Brady?
Were her kids banished with her, or did she take them with her?
They banished her. I think the assumption is that where she went, her family would go too. Although I suppose they didn't have to.
Yeah.
But her family went. Devin?
It says he dug up the grave of a miscarried child Hutchinson had delivered. Does that mean he was digging the grave for it, or he was digging...
No, it was already buried and he dug it up to look at it.
That's so weird.
And what did he find? What was that, Stephen?
The devil.
Yeah. Any other comments? All right, now I want you to read on your own another article, and this will be your assignment for tomorrow. And we'll look forward to having a discussion tomorrow over this so that you don't have to write more. And that is, I want you to read and highlight, this is a chapter from a book, and the chapter is called The Pruning of the Lord's Vineyard. It should come right next. I think I started partway through the chapter, so that may be in the middle of the sentence even. So just start where it looks like you can start on that. The Pruning of the Lord's Vineyard. And we'll see another perspective of the same events. Any questions?